I feel like
Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Okay, hi, my name is Maggie, and my book is Honor Girl. It's a memoir, so, it's about me. You'll get used to seeing my face. It's about forbidden love at an all-girls summer camp when I was 15 in Kentucky. It's mostly about, how when you're young, your first love just, hits you in the face out of nowhere. And you have no experience with these feelings, you had no idea you were capable of these feelings, and you feel like you're gonna die, every single second. And I feel like young love is, really romanticized by adults, but when you're young and you're experiencing it, it's more like you are in a pit of hell, and it's horrible, and adults forget that. It's not like running around holding hands with a musical soundtrack. So anyway, and you can't go back after that. After you experience those intense feelings, you are doomed for life. That's what makes you an adult. And I have this theory that, you become an adult one of two ways. Either you fall in love or someone close to you dies. And either way, you just have these intense feelings and you can never bounce back from that. So if we could go to the next one, if you don't mind. So for me, it happened during a lice inspection. It was super duper romantic. It was an older female counselor. I had no idea I was capable of these feelings, but when she touched my hair, I just died and was never ever the same. So when I started this, I had zero art experience. I didn't have much experience with comics. I'd barely even read many. And you can see how totally shitty my first draft was. I didn't even know to put the panel, the lines between them. I had no idea what I was doing. And I basically, I was in way over my head, and I cried, every day for a month. The learning curve for comics is incredibly steep. I have so much admiration for my fellow comics up here. So why did I do this to myself if it was so hard and awful? And the reason is that I knew I needed to tell this story because this is my origin story as a human being. This is where everything that I am basically comes from this summer. So I knew I needed to get this out of my system, and when I tried to write it using prose, I felt completely inept. But when I drew myself, I found it much more effective, and I'll show you why. So the next one, imagine that you can see me sitting at a desk, torturously attempting to write a love letter to beautiful Erin, the counselor. And it's in these pages, since it's comics, you can just be with me in the moment. You can see my frustration. I'm writing, I love you, I love you, I love you, and then crossing it out and crumpling it and throwing it in the garbage where it belongs. And if I were writing this, it would be outside, a bird chirped, teasing me as the words swirled in my fevered mind. And it would just I could not bring myself to do that. But with comics, you can just show who you are and what is going on, and you can just really be with a character in the moment. And in this case, the character is me. And so now that I've done this book, I basically will never go back. I'm addicted to comics as a form of self-expression and a way to talk about really personal stuff. And it's been a total revelation, and I'm never going back. So that's me.
Hey everybody. So my name is Elvis. Hello. Thanks for coming out. Next slide. So I do a comic called Homos in History, and it's a zine series where basically each issue does a different decade of queer history. So we dive back into the 19th century, the 20s, the 50s, 70s, and a little of the 80s over there. Next slide. And right now I just thought I'd show you guys a little bit of something I'm working on, which is a zine about feminist bookstores, and just kind of these rare little spaces that kind of like this place, create space, like Monica was saying, for, feministy things to happen. So what you're looking at is a map of the 13 remaining feminist bookstores that exist. And it might seem like a lot, but then next slide. there used to be a whole lot more. Just only about like 25 years ago, there was 120 feminist bookstores that existed all across the US and a couple in Canada. So there was like this 90% drop of these bookstores over a 20-year span, which is a lot. That's a lot, my little friend says. Next slide. Yeah, so California, this is not a fish stick, it's the state of California. But it was filled with all these crazy places, crazy names, River Queen, old wives' tales. It's just, I'm kind of diving in and checking out what these places were like. Next slide. Yeah, so now there's only 13 in the US and Canada combined, and this person's like, but why? So when I was looking at this, I used to volunteer at Blue Stockings bookstores for a really long time, which if you haven't been to is in Manhattan. It's really great. So there's sort of like, since these bookstores started in 1970 was the first one and onwards, they sort of created this happy little bookstore, this representation of this whole little ecosystem that, of creation that they really started. So, if you were hanging out with your friend at the bookstore, you got an idea, maybe you'd go back, get some more ideas, and pre-internet, it was like a very good way of sort of, getting all connected with other ways of getting your work out there. Next. But really, what is a feminist space? Asking the deep questions. So I started thinking about this and I was like, well, is a group of Avon ladies, is that a feminist space? Is Oprah's studio audience a feminist space?
Good question.
I don't know. So, kind of on this panel, is a bunch of people, what does it actually mean? So these are some ideas of, all gender inclusive, empowering to its workers and volunteers. I think the balance is actually doing that in real life. Anyway, just questions. So next. And yeah, we probably all know this guy pretty well. Just the standard fellow in the world who's like, this is my amazing opus, I wrote it while it was completely wasted. It's great, here you go, it's amazing. Seminal works, aka, etc. Yeah, so just the idea that bookstores, a lot of times we think, oh, it's there's, you got your butcher shop, you got your, supermarket, you got your bookstore, as if they're neutral. And I guess my point was that, in doing this, I was looking for ways that, these spaces are not neutral, or really probably no space is politically neutral in the world. So, yeah, just a way to look at that more. And next slide. Yes, now we'll do a very, very quick look into history. So, these are some fellows. A lot of my zines are based on historical sources, so I just kind of wanted to give some examples of that. So what is a sexologist was these dudes from the 19th century, and they sort of started studying oh, okay, we're going really quickly. Never mind, keep going. Keep going. Okay, stay. Okay, let's go. I can't skip lesbian orgies. All right. So, this is just an example of something I really like to do in my comics. We'll just take a quote from history, an actual quote, and they're all sourced out, little footnotes if you care to look them up. This is a quote by the director of the Zurich Insane Asylum in 1906, and I don't know what he was experiencing or looking at in his little world, but he was like, there are these lesbian orgies seasoned with alcohol. They're happening here. Nymphomaniacal lesbians abounding. And he's like, where is the grain of truth in this? What's actually going on? So I think history is full of those strange moments. And just to wrap it up, one more, next one. This is a quote by Havelock Ellis, who's also a famous sexologist, who believed that you could tell gay people were gay because they could whistle really well. So just gonna put that out there. Let's see, 1897. Anyway, next slide. We're almost. Okay. Anyway, also co-founded the NYC Feminist Fest. It's really fun. It just happened. So come next year. I found it with my friend Kate, who's in the audience. It's really great. Next slide. The end. Thanks for listening.
Okay. Hi. So I'm Hazel, and I mostly do comics that are either autobiographical or biographical, and I wanted to present some of the biographical comics I've done and talk about how I researched them. And I feel like those two sources of material are similar in the way that, like, there's some raw facts that you're working with that are, like, just reality, or in as much as people can remember it, and then you're trying to shape that into an entertaining narrative. So yeah, I'm going to talk about how I researched a couple of the comics in my book, If This Be Sin, which is a collection of comics about queer women and music. Yeah, here's my bibliography. So these are just like some of the sources that I look at and stick in my head. Yeah, but one of the comics is about Gladys Bentley, who was a drag king and blues singer from the 20s, and there's no like full-on Gladys Bentley biography, so I sort of got bits and pieces from like academic articles about her or books that just covered like the whole of the Harlem Renaissance. And then Know What You Love Her is about Wendy and Lisa, who were the keyboard player and guitarist from Prince's band in the 80s, The Revolution. So I got sources on them from watching video interviews with them, reading interviews with them, and reading biographies of Prince, which talked about like how they influenced his music and what part they played in the band, which is what I really wanted to explore. Yeah, this is a page from If This Be Sin. I guess I put this in here to talk about like how I expand on the facts that I discovered into a narrative. Like I saw in one of those books that Gladys like performed with, I think they called it a pansy review, which was like a bunch of drag queens as well as her. So I wanted to have this scene of everybody getting ready. And then in the second panel, she's talking about her new take on Sweet Georgia Brown, which is because one of the things she was famous for performing was like bawdy parodies of songs that were popular at the time. And unfortunately, there aren't any recordings of those, but some people did write down the lyrics, like, in shock. And you can, if you read my comic, you'll find out what those lyrics are. And here's like a real article that Gladys wrote for Ebony magazine in the 50s, where she basically like went back into the closet, recanted her whole thing, was like, I'm taking hormones and now I'm not butch anymore and I'm straight. So yeah, that was a pretty easy one. I just kind of redrew what the article was. And then this is maybe the only video of Gladys Bentley, was when she was interviewed after she'd gone back into the closet on You Bet Your Life, which was hosted by one of the Marx Brothers. So this is just my translation of just like finding that video on YouTube and then making it into a comics page. But the dialogue and her look and everything is all straight out of the video. Yeah, Know What You Love Her, that's the comic about Wendy and Lisa and Prince, and the name you can kind of see is Revolution backwards, because Prince was really into wordplay, stuff like that. And like, I had to obviously sort of interpolate a lot of the dialogue, so I'm not really sure where that stands in terms of like veracity, but like, yeah, there was an interview with Wendy and Lisa where they were talking about like how Wendy joined the band, so I pretty much just translated that scene into a comic. Yeah, redrew a poster from Purple Rain. I mean, I watched Purple Rain, of course, but that's like not, you know, that's just the Hollywood version of that story. There's them recording the next album, because Wendy and Lisa had a big influence on Prince's music. Okay, also, instead of reading about people, you can actually interview people, and I worked with a writer, and we interviewed Kathleen Sadat, who is an activist from Portland, who like stood against Measure 9, which was an anti-gay measure. So I guess my point here is like, if there's like community elders or people who you're interested in who are still alive and want to talk to you, you can contact them and try and talk to them and see if they want you to make something about their lives. And here's the other comics that I do, which are they're not biographical comics. This one's about me, This one's an educational comic about abusive relationships, and that one is an anthology that I edited of comics about women gamers. Okay, that's all.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight for our panel. I'm Emily S., aka Roxy. I am the co-creator for Heartland Comic. My partner, Jan, partner in crime, we do Heartland Comic. So this is me, Roxy. This is Jan, who's moderating the panel. So Heartland Comic, currently you can find it. It is a webcomic. So you can find it online. And also we are selling a couple of our zines in the back room. So Heartland Comic, Jan and I kind of created Heartland Comic in 2014. We met in college. I'm from the Midwest and Jan is from New York. So we met in college and I think our friendship started with a lot of storytelling. So I love telling stories, and I think when I was in high school, I didn't really have that voice to talk about what was going on. But when I got to college, Jan was my best audience, and we would tell each other stories all the time. And being that Jan was from New York, I was really fascinated with New York because I'd always been from the Midwest. And I like to tell her funny stories about my very Christian mom and my upbringing in the Midwest and those kind of things. So yeah, we always told each other stories, and that's kind of how Heartland was born. Is Jan and I live in two different cities. I live in Chicago. Jan lives in New York City. So we tell each other stories, and that's kind of how Heartland came out. So I tell a story, and then Jan tells a story. I always wanted, and I love telling stories. It's like one of my things that I started to do in college is by telling some of these stories that were painful at the time, it's part healing, and also I like entertaining. So, and I also like to kind of make fun of a lot of the mistakes that I have made in my life. Yeah, so this is one of my episodes. It's about being from the Midwest and being at like a basement punk show, and I used to hang out with a lot of asshole punk guys in high school, and they used to make fun of me and be like, Emily just wants to be gay. And then this is me crying in my bedroom, and then that's the next year I got a little angrier versus crying, and then now this is me present day with my partner, I'm a dyke, and I'm like, fuck you. Fuck you, I am gay. Okay? So, yeah. So, telling these stories, it's really fun for me, but it's kind of healing too. And also, this is another one of my episodes where, if anybody is from Minneapolis, Sex World, really, kind of a local favorite sex store. And I went there and I got my first vibrator, and then my mom caught me masturbating in my bedroom. Yeah. And so for a long time I didn't tell that story because I was so horrified, but now I love to tell it to everyone. If you want all of the details, just ask me later. So yeah, and these are the kind of stories that Jan and I kind of always tell each other. And then, so I felt comfortable telling my best friend in college, and then kept telling these stories, and yeah, so you can go to that song. So this is Jan's latest episode. And one thing I left out is I do not do any of the illustrations. So all of these beautiful illustrations are all done by Jan. So I just tell my stories, and Jan tells her stories, but she draws everything. So yeah. So this is Jan's newest webisode, episode 14. Check it out online. It's really amazing. So Jan's story is, you can kind of flip through these as I talk, but Jan's story is about her living in New York and always riding on trains and shit that was happening to her on trains, and kind of being in a tough place in life with kind of a toxic relationship, toxic job, and then realizing, you know what, I'm gonna get a bike. And that was kind of a pivotal moment in Jan's life. So yeah, this is a really powerful story, so everybody should check this out online. And then you can go to the last slide. And this is kind of it. So Jan started biking, and a lot of good things happened in Jan's life. So, yeah, so anyway, so at this moment, Jan and I are collaborating. I'm in Chicago, she's in New York. We talk on the phone and have a beer on Friday night and talk and kind of create our comics together. So, yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.